There is a civil war happening on American streets right now. But the soldiers, they aren't Americans.
No.
They're members of a foreign prison gang, and they are fighting a proxy war over turf in the Bronx, Chicago, Seattle.
It honestly sounds like the plot of a movie, doesn't it? But unfortunately, if you look at this stack of indictments we have today, this is reality. This is what law enforcement is facing.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are unpacking a story that is, well, it's terrifying, but you absolutely have to understand it if you want to get what's really happening with the migrant crisis and public safety.
We do.
We have a massive new indictment from the Southern District of New York. We have DOJ reports and a deep strategic analysis on something called Operation Take Back America.
And we're going to zero in on a specific massive development here. Federal authorities and the NYPD, they have just dropped the hammer on 27 alleged members of a group called Anti-Tren. And just looking at the sheer volume of charges, I mean, racketeering, sex trafficking, narcotics, a double murder, this is not just some street gang bust. This is a dismantle operation.
And before we get into, the gore and the guns, let's set the stage with the politics, because the optics here are just fascinating.
Oh, yeah?
You have the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, a Democrat, standing shoulder to shoulder with Tom Homan.
The White House borders are for the Trump administration.
Exactly.
That image alone tells you everything about how serious this is. You just don't see that kind of, cross-aisle collaboration on immigration. Not like this.
Not at all.
But Homan did not mince words. He called this a move to rid the city of illegal alien public safety threats. And this is the key phrase, national security threats.
That phrase, national security threats, that immediately caught my eye. It shits the whole window, doesn't it?
Complete.
It moves the conversation from just crime to defense.
It does. And that is really the thesis of our deep dive today. We aren't just looking at robbers or drug dealers here. We're looking at a transnational criminal organization that the government is, starting to treat like an invading force.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of it. This group, at the center of the indictment, it's called Anti-Tren.
Right.
Now, when I first saw that name in the DOJ files, I'll be honest, I had a moment of hope. I thought, Anti-Tren, are these guys vigilantes? Are they the good guys fighting Tren de Aragua?
I think a lot of people would hope for some kind of Batman scenario, but no. The answer is absolutely not.
So what is it?
Anti-Tren is just a branding tactic. It's marketing.
Underworld marketing.
Exactly. According to the World of Crime report and, the background checks on these 27 defendants, the members of Anti-Tren are almost all former members of Tren de Aragua, TDA.
So, they're the same guys. Same rap sheets, same methods.
Identical. We're talking about the exact same brutal portfolio. Sex trafficking, gun running, contract killing. The only difference, and this is the key thing for you to understand, is who they're cutting the check to at the end of the month.
It's a franchise war.
That is the perfect analogy. It's like a fast food franchise that just suddenly decides, you know what? We're not sending our royalties back to corporate anymore. We're keeping the profit, but we are still selling the same burgers.
Except in this case, the burgers are tusi, that pink cocaine that we keep reading about.
Right.
And the corporate headquarters is a prison gang back in Venezuela.
Precisely. And in the criminal world, you can't just break a franchise agreement. You have to fight for it.
So Anti-Tren isn't a moral stance.
No, it's a declaration of independence. They're rogue franchises, and they're fighting the old leadership for turf and for profit.
And that fight is getting incredibly violent. The indictment from the Southern District of New York, it details a double murder, April 15, 2024, in the Bronx.
Right, two rivals just gunned down in broad daylight. But if you dig into the indictment, the violence isn't just directed outward. It's the internal discipline that really turns your stomach.
I saw that. The order to shoot on sight, but not to kill.
To maim. The gang leaders ordered members to shoot their own associates in the leg.
Their own guy.
As punishment. If you mess up a drop, if you show disloyalty, maybe you don't pay your quota, your dues on time.
You get a bullet in the femur.
Yeah. It's brutal, but it's effective personnel management. It sends a very clear message. We own your body.
Which I guess brings us to the other major revenue stream in these charges, the multadas.
And this is the most heartbreaking part of the whole file. Multadas refers to the women.
Mostly Venezuelan migrants.
Almost exclusively. The gang smuggles them across the border, pretending they're helping them find safety, but it's a bait and switch.
Of course.
The minute they get to New York or Chicago, the script flips. They're told they owe this massive debt, for the transport.
Debt bondage.
Yeah.
It's classic human trafficking.
It's modern-day slavery. They force these women into sex work to pay it off. And the leverage they use is just, it's terrifying. If a woman tries to run or go to the police, the gang doesn't just threaten her.
They go after the family.
They threaten to kill her mother, her children back in Venezuela.
Because they still have that reach.
Exactly. And Anti-Tren, despite the name, is doing the exact same thing. They're just fighting over who gets to exploit these women. It is a dispute over inventory, not ethics.
Okay, so we've established Anti-Tren is basically a splinter cell. But to understand this war, we have to understand the split itself. Why did they break away? Why now?
To get that answer, we have to go back to September 2023. We need to look at a place called Tocorón prison in Venezuela.
I remember reading about this place. It wasn't really a prison, right? It was more like a resort run by the inmates.
It was a fortress city. The Black Chronicle had a great piece on this. Inside the walls, Tren de Aragua had built a nightclub, a swimming pool, a baseball stadium, even a zoo.
A zoo?
With exotic animals. Yeah, it was their headquarters. The Venezuelan government had basically just ceded control for years. But in September 2023, the government finally decided, enough is enough.
So they raided it.
They launched a full-scale military raid with 11,000 troops.
11,000. That's an invasion force.
It was a siege. They stormed the prison to retake it, and tactically, they succeeded. They captured the ground. But strategically, it was a disaster.
Why? Because they missed their target.
They missed the Niño Guerrero, the top boss. He was tipped off. He escaped through a network of tunnels before the first boot even hit the ground.
So the king escapes, but the castle is destroyed.
Exactly. And this brings us right back to that franchise idea. When Tocorón fell, the central command of the gang was decapitated. The communication lines were cut. The call center, the bank, the whole terrifying reputation of that place, it all just evaporated overnight.
So if you're a gang leader in the Bronx or Chicago, all of a sudden the phone stops ringing.
And you start doing the math. You're thinking, why am I sending 50% of my profits to a guy who's hiding in a tunnel somewhere? He can't enforce his will anymore. He has no army here.
The fear of the central leadership just vanished.
The spell was broken. So the U.S. cells looked around and decided to go into business for themselves. And that's how Anti-Tren was born. It wasn't ideological. It was an opportunistic power grab.
It's fascinating and terrifying how a military operation in South America directly caused a gang war in the Bronx.
It's the law of unintended consequences. We imported the soldiers, and when their command structure collapsed, we inherited their civil war.
Which brings us to the U.S. response, because the government is not just watching this happen.
No.
We mentioned Border Czar Tom Homan earlier. His rhetoric is incredibly aggressive, but let's look at the actual strategy. They're calling it Operation Take Back America.
Right. And this is where we see that shift from policing to warfare. Homan's quote at the press conference was really telling. He said, "I never asked the city to be immigration officers. I asked them to work with us on significant public safety threats."
He's trying to thread a needle there. He's saying, I don't need you to check visas at a traffic stop. I need you to help me catch murderers.
He's trying to bypass all the political baggage of the sanctuary city debate by framing it purely as a public safety issue. But the tools they're using, they're historic. We have to talk about the Alien Enemies Act of 1798.
1798. That's John Adams' era. That is a law written for wooden ships and muskets.
It was written during the quasi-war with France.
Yeah.
And it allows the president to detain and deport non-citizens if their home country is at war with the U.S. Or, and this is the clause they're using, if there's a predatory invasion.
So the Trump administration is arguing that Tren de Aragua constitutes a predatory invasion.
That's the argument, yes. That these armed, organized groups coming in fits the legal definition.
But why use a law that's so old? What's the advantage?
Speed. That is the only reason. If you use standard immigration law, a gang member gets caught, they claim asylum, they enter a backlog that's 5 years long, they're back out on the street in days.
Catch and release.
Exactly. But the Alien Enemies Act, it bypasses the immigration courts entirely. It treats them as enemy combatants. No hearing, no backlog, you're identified, detained, removed.
That's a legal nuclear option. Civil liberties groups have to be screaming.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly controversial. But the administration is pairing it with another heavy hitter, designating Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO.
Which puts them in the same category as ISIS or Al-Qaeda.
And that unlocks the RICO statutes on steroids. It lets them freeze assets. It brings harsher prison sentences. We're talking 20 years plus. And it brings charges for anyone providing material support. It forces the entire federal machine to pivot from immigration to counterterrorism.
But even with these federal superpowers, there's a local roadblock, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the tension with New York City, specifically about Rikers Island.
This is the friction point. Homan and Mayor Adams want to put an ICE office, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, physically inside Rikers Island jail.
From a purely logical standpoint, that seems obvious. If you have a violent criminal in custody, you want the feds to check if he's a wanted gang member before you let him go.
It makes perfect public safety sense. But legally, it's a minefield. Current New York local laws, the sanctuary laws, they restrict how much the city can cooperate with ICE.
So there's a lawsuit.
There is. It's blocking the feds from setting up shop there.
So the mayor wants them there, the feds want to be there, but the local laws are keeping the door shut.
Correct. And Homan was blunt about the consequences. He argues that blocking ICE from Rikers guarantees that dangerous people get released back onto the street to reoffend. He's basically saying, if you don't let us ID them in the cage, you force us to hunt them in the neighborhoods.
And hunting them in the neighborhoods is the hard part, because unlike other gangs we've studied, these guys don't exactly advertise who they are.
That's the invisible threat part of this. I mean, think back to MS-13.
Massive face tattoos. You knew exactly who they were.
They wanted you to know. Fear was their brand. Tren de Aragua and Anti-Tren. They're different, they're smarter, they want to be invisible. The World of Crime Report even notes they don't have a singular mandatory tattoo.
So how are cops supposed to find them if they just blend in with the general migrant population?
Homeland Security has had to develop a point system. It's profiling, sure, but it's based on very specific gang markers. They look for a constellation of signs.
What kind of signs?
5-pointed crowns, stars, AK-47 tattoos, the obvious stuff. But also, strangely specific fashion choices.
Fashion choices. You mean like gang colors?
More specific than that, Chicago Bulls gear, Michael Jordan logos.
Wait, seriously, wearing a Jordan jersey makes you a suspect. I mean, half the country wears Jordan gear.
In isolation, no, of course not. But combined with other markers, yes. It's not about basketball. The number 23, Jordan's number, it corresponds to the 23rd of January, which is this iconic neighborhood in Venezuela where the gang has really deep roots.
That's wild. It's a coded symbol that's just hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. They also use the phrase, real hasta la muerte, real until death. It's a lyric from a reggaeton artist, NULAA, but the gang has co-opted it.
So if you see that tattoo, or on a shirt, combined with a bull's cap,
that's a major red flag for law enforcement.
It sounds like asymmetric warfare. They are using our own culture, our sports jerseys, our music as camouflage.
And that connects right to the invasion narrative that CBS and the Black Chronicle were reporting on. The gang is effectively using the migrant crisis for cover. When you have millions of people crossing the border looking for work and safety, it's, mathematically very easy for a few thousand soldiers to just slip right in.
They don't look like an army. They look like refugees.
Until they get here. Then they organize. In this bust alone, just these 27 guys, the NYPD sees 33 firearms. And we aren't talking about rusty revolvers. We are talking high-capacity weaponry.
You're arming for a war.
A war against each other, against the police, and against anyone who gets in their way. Just remember the discipline shooting their own members in the leg. Imagine what they would do to a civilian witness.
It's a chilling thought. So, stepping back, looking at the whole board here.
Yeah.
We have a foreign gang that is fractured into warring tribes. They're fighting for territory in our biggest cities. And the government is dusting off laws from the 1700s to try and stop them.
That is the situation. This indictment of 27 anti-Tren members is a victory. Absolutely. It takes dangerous people off the board. But we have to be realistic about the Hydra effect.
The Hydra. Cut off one head, two more grow back.
Exactly. The gang has splintered. That means there isn't one head to cut off anymore. You take down the anti-Tren crew in the Bronx, great. But what about the crew in Chicago or the Miami faction? What about the ones still loyal to the main TDA leadership?
The fragmentation makes them harder to kill because there's no center of gravity.
It makes them decentralized, unpredictable, and potentially more violent. When gangs fracture, the violence usually spikes because everyone is trying to prove they're the toughest on the block.
It really does feel like we're watching a mutation in organized crime.
We are. And that leads me to the big question that I think every listener really needs to sit with.
What's that?
We're seeing the normalization of wartime tactics on American soil. If the United States government is using the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a law designed for when we feared an invasion by the French Empire, to fight a street gang in 2026, what does that tell you about the state of our country?
It is the rules of the game have fundamentally changed.
It implies that we are, officially or not, at war. And the enemy isn't across an ocean, the enemy is next door, wearing a Michael Jordan jersey.
That is a heavy thought to leave you with, but an important one. We're going to keep tracking Operation Take Back America and this fracturing war as it develops.
Stay safe out there.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.